Hello guys, my name is Vexel, and in today's video I will be talking about how tier lists have changed in the lifespan of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Just to give you guys a heads up, I will be looking and comparing tier lists from the following patches: 1.2.0, 5.0, 10.0, and the most recent version of the game, which is 13.0.1. I will be looking at the differences in character placements in the tier lists and go over why people thought character X was, for example, top or bottom tier. Now let's stop the intro and get right into the actual video. I want to start this video talking about the tier lists that were made after the game was released and had its first patch. For this, I looked at Zero Smash Ultimate tier list, since that is the one that I came across the most when searching for tier lists from that time. And when looking at this, all I can say is what the Some of you may remember that certain characters were labeled as broken at the beginning of Ultimate, that are now considered just good or even bad characters. One of the most memorable Day 1 top tiers is Inkling. Inkling was considered by almost everyone to be one of, if not the most broken character in the game. But why? Well, for starters, Inkling has the ink mechanic. This mechanic makes it so that whenever Inkling hits their opponent with a move that uses ink, the opponent will receive additional damage from every move and additional knockback on multi-hits. Another reason why is because of Inkling's side special, Roller. If this move hits an opponent while both characters are on the ground, the opponent will be buried in the ground. And back then, nobody knew how to mash optimally yet, which made it so that Inkling players could get a kill off of a roller at really early percents. Something that really shocked me on this tier list though was the Simon and Richter placement. We all know that Simon and Richter are pretty bad characters, but back then, they were beasts. Nobody knew how to escape their ledge traps, which is their strongest position. Nobody knew any counterplay to either Holy Water, Cross, or Axe. But the thing people were most upset about was their forward smash being able to hit the ledge. Combine this with his projectiles, and people thought it was nearly impossible to get off the ledge against them. But not only that, people were also just upset about fighting them in neutral because of their really good range and stage control of projectiles. They didn't know how to approach or beat their aerials or projectiles, and this is why Simon and Richter were considered high tiers and almost top tier. And Inkling was considered a top tier, and by some the best character in the game. Now on the opposite side of the tier list, we have Mr. Game & Watch, who was considered to be in the top 6 worst characters in the game. The reasoning for this was that people felt like Game & Watch was just way too light, because he dies really early to a lot of things. In his tier list video, Zero also mentions that forward air is basically useless, because if Game & Watch is doing the move, you basically just do not approach. He also says it doesn't kill, and he also says that even though Game & Watch has some combos, he does no damage. He thinks that Game & Watch overall just got nerfed from Smash 4 to Ultimate, and that he needs some good buffs. That was all for patch 1.2.0. Let's move on to patch 5.0. Now, in patch 5.0, some changes were made. For this patch, I compared the tier list of Mewtwo King, Armada, and Pro Guides. Now, from patch 1.2.0 to 5.0, some changes were made. Balance changes, the players got better at the game, and some DLC was released. If you look at all 3 tier lists, we can see that Inkling was still considered to be a top tier, but that Simon and Richter, in 2 out of 3 tier lists, is now actually considered a mid tier. This was because people basically became better at the game and their characters, but also at fighting the Belmonts in general, so they dropped a few tiers. Mr. Game & Watch, on the other hand, is the opposite. People realized how good he actually is, and that his combo game was just insane, that his combos did way too much damage, and that he is just really good overall. Earlier, I said that Inkling was one of the most memorable Day 1 top tiers in Ultimate, but there was another character that comes to mind as well: Pichu. Around this time, Pichu was dominating the competitive scene with his insane combos and damage output, his edge guarding, his advantage, his recovery, his insane kill power, but there was one thing that made Pichu the monster he was, and that was his forward tilt. This was one of the best moves in the entire game back then. It killed really early, and that was partially because it had a disgusting knockback angle, and because it killed around 100%. Not only that, but the hitbox was way too big, and was one of the freest 2-framing options in the game. Another reason why Pichu was considered to be really good is because Pichu actually did less damage to himself with his electric moves than he does now, which made throwing out those moves less riskier. In general, Pichu has some amazing moves and really good overall stats besides his weight. It was also really hard for people to hit Pichu because of his small hurt box and his fast movement speed. By this time, as said before, some DLC came out, which included Joker. Joker was said to be one of, if not the best character in the game, because he has an amazing everything. All his moves are good, he does good damage, and good overall stats. His slim character design and weird hurtbox shifting made it hard to hit and combo him. He also had one of the best recoveries in the game with his stutter recovery. He has great whiff punishing. The only thing he didn't have was skill power, but that just get cancelled out by the fact that he gets Arsene. Overall, he was just considered to be one of the best characters in the game. We all know that one of the main reasons why he was considered to be top tier early on was because of a certain player absolutely dominating the scene with Joker, and that player was MKLeo. We all know that there was a time where MKLeo was just unbeatable and that he won almost every tournament he attended. This was the start of not only MKLeo's legendary story, but also the start of the rise of Joker. Now let's talk about Cloud. Cloud was considered to be a pretty bad character around this time. Even though I could talk about so many reasons why people thought this, I will just be talking about one of them, and that is Smash 4 Cloud. Top players kept comparing Smash Ultimate Cloud to his older character design from Smash 4, and kept saying that he was bad because of how much worse he was in this game compared to Smash 4. People were basically kind of ignoring the fact that he was overall pretty good and just said, well, he's not like he used to be, and therefore he is bad. So in this patch, you could say a lot had changed. Now let's take a look at patch 10.0. For patch 10.0, I will be comparing eSim's tier list with one from the Smash Bros. Ultimate Reddit page. One thing I immediately realized was the drop of Pichu on both tier lists. Pichu went from being one of the best characters in the game to just being a mid tier, to not even being top 30 anymore, because he actually got some big nerfs. The biggest one being the nerf to his forward tilt, which made it kill later, and a buff to his self damage. Pichu now did more damage to himself with electric moves than before, which was an absolute deal breaker for him. It made him drop down on the tier list so hard. Joker still remained around the same on the tier list, and so did Cloud. Between this patch and 5.0, some more DLC characters were released, one of those being Steve. People collectively agreed on the fact that Steve was not a good character because of his lack of mobility and bad jump height. People said that he had really bad neutral and not really a way to pressure his opponent or a way to deal with pressure from the opponent, and that he had a lack of range. As time went on, people started to notice that Steve was actually not that bad and decided to call Steve a high tier because they realized that Steve didn't need to approach and could just mine for diamonds the entire game. And they also realized that minecart was one of the best side specials in the game, that his ledge trapping was insanely broken, and that block was really good at helping Steve get diamond, and agreed on him being high tier, but they didn't think he was much better than that. Byleth is a character that was considered to be pretty bad in Ultimate. Why? Well, because they didn't have good movement speed, they don't have that many combos, and they are relatively easy to edge guard, players said. They said that she had so many unusable moves, those being neutral special, and down air. Bad neutral, bad out of shield options, and that they could have had a bit of better frame data. They basically said that Byleth got outclassed by the rest of the cast. They said that the only thing they had going for them was their range, their damage output, and kill power. Now let's move on to the final patch. For this patch, I will be using eSim's tier list and the official tier list as references. The only reason I use both and not just the official tier list is because I think the official tier list is a hot pilot. So, patch 13.0.1 is the last version of the game, and as we can see, people were very wrong about Steve. Steve went from being a high tier to the best character in the game, without any buffs. Not only the best character in the game, but also a banned character in some places. Steve players finally started to learn the character, and everyone was like, wait, this is actually kinda ridiculous. People realized that Steve had everything going for him. He has way too powerful combos, insane neutral, ridiculous edge guarding / ledge trapping, block is stupidly broken, a good advantage and disadvantage, insane whiff punishing. He basically does everything. People finally learned that he is just a completely broken character. I could go on and talk about this character for hours, but for the sake of the video, I won't. Now, if we look at Byleth's placement, we can see that they actually moved up quite a few tiers as well. Again, all thanks to one player, again, MKLeo. He proved that even though they might not have the best stats, that this character has their own strength and can be very dominant if used correctly. That is why Byleth is now considered a high tier. As we can see, throughout all the years of the game's lifespan, tier lists have changed dramatically. Whether that be because of balance changes or people figuring things out and getting better at the game or at their character, or one player winning almost every tournament he went to for years straight with one character. And remember guys, just because your character isn't as high on the tier list as other characters, doesn't mean your character is unplayable. Just play characters that you think are fun and have a good time with them. That's going to be it for this video guys. If you enjoyed it, a like and a sub would be greatly appreciated. You can also turn on that notification bell, you don't have to, just so you know when I upload a new video. Tips in the comments on how I can improve my content are always welcome, and I will hopefully see you guys next time. Goodbye.